Hey, I guess we're live. Here we go. Trying this through a little bit of a different platform than what I am used to using. It's still all basically the same equipment or whatnot, but not using the StreamYard, which again to y'all doesn't necessarily mean anything, but wanted to try and do this directly through YouTube's live broadcasting component to see how it works in comparison. Just knock something over because, of course, I have. Why not have it happen and when I'm on live as opposed to the other 60 hours a week I'm up here in my office? But you are here live with myself, Kevin Noon, part of Buckeye Grove, and it is a good opportunity for us to talk some Ohio State football, Ohio State recruiting. Let's do a call to action. Let's get some questions. All right, and a good opportunity for us to kind of catch up. Yesterday, Joseph Hastings and myself went live with our audio podcast, the BIA Buckeye Grove Instant Access podcast. Answered a lot of questions there, but where I think that the live video does something that maybe the audio podcast doesn't is this is a chance for you to interact with us, for you to be able to come in, ask your questions. We'll see them here, be able to answer them. If this is something that seems to work, we'll do these more. If these are things that we don't get a lot of replies on, we'll, adjust on the fly. I mean, ultimately, that's the way that we've got to do it. There's also the chance to contribute to the channel with the super chat feature. I don't know a whole lot about it. So if you do, jump in with that. Would love to see it. Again, getting involved in the super chat will keep me from having to put on a bikini and get on OnlyFans or something gross like that. So, I don't want to chase anybody off with that awful image in their mind. It bothers me too. But all joking aside, glad, as we're seeing a couple people trickle into the room right now, give it that thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to hit that bell. Be sure to know whenever we go live or post any of our videos. We're certainly trying to up our video content a little bit more here on Buckeye Grove. It seems that's kind of where things are in terms of the industry. A lot of that live video, a lot of that direct interaction. I know a lot of people who come over here are members over at BuckeyeGrove.com, and we do a great job over there of, answering your questions. So I've always kind of had the thought in my mind of, is there enough out there for us to be able to take this live interaction when we do a great job of communicating with our customers there? But I know that there are a lot of you out there that are not customers at Buckeye Grove, and this is your opportunity to get on board, check things out. We're coming out of a tremendous June period where Ohio State had countless, well, there was a count on it, so I guess countless is the wrong word, but just numerous official visits, unofficial visits, 7 camps. But remember, camps were split into 2 sections. Ultimately, there were 9 camps because 2 of them were underclassmen camps, underclassmen camps. But 7 high school level camps split into 2 sessions, so 14 camps. We were at all 14 of those big events. And then, of course, we get into July, and Ohio State already 3 commits in the fold this month, none bigger than JT Tuimoloau, who is a member of the class of 2021. He made his commitment on July 4th. I just so happened to be out of the country, but for those of you who are part of the channel, you had the opportunity to see me poolside in the Dominican Republic giving my immediate thoughts. I didn't even get the chance to watch his video on CBS HQ, so I didn't even know what he'd said, but it's something that's been a long time coming. Certainly something that was expected to a certain extent, but we have seen players that we've expected go elsewhere. We've seen vice versa happen. Now, that's the reason why we're running our Ones That Got Away series right now over on Buckeye Grove, where we go through, I think we go back to 2006 and look at all of the classes and highlight, 2, 3, 4, maybe even up to 5 players who, quote unquote, got away. And now that doesn't necessarily mean that they were ones that were 100% locked in to go into Ohio State and then just got away. 1 or 2 of the guys that we mentioned there didn't visit Ohio State. A lot of the guys did. Some of them that we, some of them that we, check in to see if I can do that. All right, I don't know how to do. I guess this isn't like StreamYard to where I can put posts up on the board. But back to the point, it's some of the guys. You look at Jamel Dean, who certainly enrolled at Ohio State. He enrolled at Ohio State, got medically DQ'd, wasn't happy with that, went to Auburn, and lo and behold, he's playing for the Tampa Bay Bucks. So something went wrong with that one. There's no doubt in my mind on that. But for every guy like that, we also, and that's, around that same era, Porter Gustin, who played at USC. Ohio State always had that Urban Meyer special. And I think a lot of people thought that Urban Meyer special was going to be Porter Gustin coming out of Utah, whether or not he was going to play linebacker, whether or not he was going to play on the end. He ended up obviously playing with SC. Ohio State really made a push there. So we've gone through there, and it's given us the opportunity to look at a lot of names of players because we focus on the 85 who are on the Ohio State roster at any given time in terms of scholarship players. And I never want to look like I'm selling short any of the walk-ons. We've seen walk-ons go on to great scholarship success. I mean, but even the ones who seem to be anonymous in terms of the national view, provide a valuable service in terms of being there for full practices, going against the ones and twos. I mean, they're just as much of a part of the team as the 85 who are on scholarship. And personally, I'm really glad to see that the way that the NC2A now, does not have as great of a separation in terms of, well, we can feed the 85 who are on scholarship, but we can't feed the walk-ons. I mean, it just really seemed like an antiquated and broken system, and that was something that got fixed years ago. So, for as much as we want to stick a pin and rail on the NC2A for how it handles this, that, or the other, that's okay. But, they do get some things right at some points. But we were talking about JTT here. And, he certainly is somebody that I think it's going to be really important to see as soon as he gets on campus, how quickly he's able to get into mix, Mickey Marotti, strength and conditioning coach, associate AD of sports and athletic performance, something along those lines. Nice title, certainly. How quickly he's able to get into that whole situation. Johnny, I see your note there. I'm not doing anything for class of 2023 yet. So Brennan Vernon, if we do redo this piece coming up here in 5 years or whatever, Brennan Vernon quite possibly could be on that list if that Notre Dame commitment sticks. But we peter out at 21. I don't think that there's any reason to talk about an unsigned class because we don't know who truthfully is going to sign all the way through. We certainly thought that Dasan McCullough was going to make it through, and then his dad gets a job at Indiana, and then his younger brother commits, and then his older brother transfers in, and then lo and behold, Dasan leaves. But I mean, I guess that one is understandable. I don't think anybody should be upset for that opportunity. There's certainly a name or two in the class right now that people are concerned whether or not it's going to make it to National Signing Day. We're just going to have to see. Ohio State's a program that certainly flips players. So you just don't know. So we're not going to get too far ahead of ourselves. But, back to JTT and the strength and conditioning program. It's one thing to be weight room ready, to be able to do the lifting and whatnot. And obviously this guy right here, Marotti would kill me in about an hour. Not quite weight room ready. Signed up for a new gym program about 2 months ago. Even longer than that, but they opened it finally. I go on vacation. I'm only doing 12 and 16 ounce drink curls at that point. They've called me to make sure I'm not dead or something. They'll keep cashing the checks or whatnot, but haven't had the opportunity. Have not had the opportunity to get back there. I need to probably start that again fresh on Monday. No reason to go on Friday, feel like hell over the weekend, and then have to go fresh. But to JTT, it's about having the endurance and things along those natures. You get these guys who come into the program in great shape, And then they go through mat drills, and they go through the Harley Davidson workout, and they go through all this other. I mean, hell, we can just even go to the conditioning test. Whips their butt. I mean, it whips their butt, and as it should. I mean, it's not supposed to be just some sort of lowest bar of you need to be at this point to, you need to be this tall to ride this ride. I mean, they're taxing these guys out there. So, how long will it take JTT to be able to get through all of that? People are going to say, well, you got to lose his black stripe. I've seen players who have not lost their black stripe play. I've certainly seen players who have lost their black stripe not play. It's truthfully a motivational tool in a lot of ways, and I think that's all well and good. I mean, I don't disagree with when Urban Meyer brought it in, but people are like, well, what do you think the criteria are? There aren't any criteria. It's not like he has this printed scroll that says we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do that to get the black stripe removed. Do you operate better pissed off? We're going to leave that on you. We're going to leave that black stripe on you, keep you pissed off, and get you to the point of, get as much as we can out of you. Are you somebody that needs a little extra coaxing to get along? Well, maybe we'll take that black stripe off earlier so you get that accomplishment of losing the black stripe just to keep building you up. So, I'll get back to the JTT black stripe and everything there in a moment. Can we do a whole series about the 2020s who got away? Well, we got one about 21. So I think that runs on Saturday. I'm pretty sure it's Saturday because I ran 13 pieces, and then I've got a different 2-part piece that runs on Sunday. 2020 running backs. That is okay. I get what you're saying on there, Johnny, for certain. Funny guy. I think all of that is still fresh enough on the board that I don't need to write a piece. And if we're being honest, we know so much of this is community driven, and we try to write what people want to read. There's some pieces that are impossible to write. Hey, can you predict, what the 23 class is going to look like? No. Because the staff doesn't know what the 23 class is going to look like. The players don't know. I mean, the players that are looking to commit or not commit, they don't know what's going on there. And that's not necessarily what Johnny is asking for. But with that being said, I think anything that's still within the 2020s is being talked about, but we will have a 2020 for sure. And I think 2021, look for those to run Friday, Saturday, as we started at 2006 to work our way up. And concurrently, we're running an NFL draft snapshots piece that we started at 2021, and we're working our way down. So that way we didn't have two pieces moving in unison, even with 3 to 5 years of separation. We wanted to keep the two pieces largely independent of one another. So we have that. But back to JTT. I see a situation of where when he comes in, he's not going to be somebody that's going to be pushing Zach Harrison, Tyreek Smith, Tyler Friday, for immediate playing time. But I could see him being 15, 17 snaps relatively early on, provided that they feel that he's got, that he's going to be able to contribute, because ultimately it's about getting your best 11 on, and even in a smaller system, getting your best 4 on it in terms of the defensive line. What I do like the idea of, and, we talked about this on a show with Mark Rogers on his channel yesterday, was the potential of him being part of a Rushman package playing inside, because there's still a debate whether or not he's truly an end, if he's going to play inside, if he's going to hybrid, what is he going to be? But you put him inside in a Rushman package and you would say, see ball, get ball, no edge containment, none of that. Not saying he didn't have to do that in high school, but we know that the leap from high school to college is significant, just as the leap to the NFL from college is significant. But you have very few responsibilities here. This is not a running down. Just go out there and cause as much havoc as you can. I think something like that could work out. And just the future as well, when you look at Jack Sawyer and JTT being part of the same line for 3 years. And to repeat a line that I said on, I think it was on the Mark Rogers show, don't count on it being 4, just count on it being 3. I mean, these are 3 and done type of guys. Even if the first year you don't see a ton of the production numbers, by year 2, year 3, and that's not saying that they couldn't have big freshman year. I mean, certainly, absolutely can. I wouldn't be surprised if one or both of them didn't have big freshman years. But after year 2 or year 3, zero chance. Both of them should probably be really good earners with name, image, likeness. But I don't think there's going to be anybody that's a potential first-round pick, and that's a ton of pressure to put on somebody saying, "Oh, this guy's going to be a first-round pick," who hasn't played a down of college football. But when you're that 5-star, when you're a top 11 guy in the rivals rankings for class of 2022, I think the expectations are high. So while you could make some decent scratch in terms of name, image, likeness, again, we don't know what that's really going to look like as we're 8 days into the NIL era. That's a drop in the bucket compared to what that first NFL contract is going to be, and that's a drop in the bucket compared to what a second NFL contract can be if you get through your 4+1. If you're a first rounder, you get through your 4 years and your option year. So the point being there, I'm sure there are going to be times where people are going to be like, well, why would they walk away from this NIL money? Well, because NFL money is certainly going to be greater than NIL money. But I digress right there. Again, be sure to ask your questions. Johnny has done a great job with all of that. If you can figure out the super chat to help out the channel, that would be great too. Again, I don't know how it works in particular. I got a lot of friends who do this YouTube thing almost as a full-time gig, so I need to really talk to them and understand how that is. Be sure to give me your feedback on this. And if you're not a member of Buckeye Grove, be sure to get on board as well too. We'd love to have you. We love our community. We would love to sit there and welcome you in with open arms. But back to this big recruiting weekend, or this big recruiting week for Ohio State in terms of commitments. Terrence Brooks and Kojo Antwi, both members of 2022 class, are also in. But the nature of recruiting is what's next. And with Terrence Brooks, and again, I was out of the country at this point, so I didn't necessarily see it coming. It was one of these things that I went back to the room for a couple of minutes, and lo and behold, I see all these stories posted on the board about it, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess that happened. Top 50 player out of Little Elm, Texas. Ohio State certainly recruiting Texas well, and then Kojo Antwi, member of the Rivals 250, wide receiver out of Sewanee, Georgia. But people want to talk about what's next, because a bird in the hand, two in the bush, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We can get into that big book of of sayings and axioms or whatever. People want to talk about that next guy, whether it be Cam Dewberry, the offensive lineman out of Humble, Texas, whether it be Chris McClellan, the defensive tackle out of Owasso, Oklahoma, same school that produced Josh Proctor. If it could be somebody else, if it could be a 2023, we've not seen Ohio State breakthrough in 2023. And to get back to Johnny's earlier comment about Brennan Vernon, who committed to Notre Dame, excuse me, he camped at Ohio State. It always seemed like he had a fantastic relationship with Notre Dame. You don't see Ohio State losing out on a lot of in-state players. The one thing that we don't see is Ohio State losing out on in-state players to that school up north, though. Notre Dame does go in and pull some kids out of Cleveland or out of the GCL down in Cincinnati. Certainly, the Catholic ties with Notre Dame run very deep in a lot of households, and it's a big hill to climb. So. But there are a lot of other guys out there that could be the next guy. Luke Montgomery, Josh Padilla. We could go out of state. Somebody like Carnell Tate, the receiver who's originally out of Chicago but at IMG. What about Richard Young, the running back out of Lehigh Acres? I think that one might be a little bit of a stretch at this point. I see him taking it pretty deep. How about Trayon Webb? I know that there's a lot of talk that Oklahoma has not only made up a lot of ground, but may be the leader. Ohio State certainly does well recruiting out of Trinity Christian International. Sometimes that school's called Trinity Christian. Sometimes it's called Trinity International. I know where it is. I've been there multiple times. But you see Tyreek Johnson leave to go to Nebraska. That's the same school that produced Sean Wade. That was a school where Jaheim Singletary was before he transferred to Lee. So you don't always know. I mean, there's a lot of talk about this Duval to Columbus situation, and everything was hunky dory during Southern Swing, and then Tyreek transfers out, and certainly Sean Wade didn't have the final season that everybody had hoped for, namely Sean Wade. He went from somebody who was probably a late one to wherever it is that he went. We'll play the hindsight game there. We'll certainly play the hindsight game there. Let me go back to Johnny's latest question. Fair to say that JTT will be behind Jack Sawyer this season since Jack will have a 7-month advantage? I don't know. Maybe. I think, talent is talent, and both of them are dripping with talent. But you just don't know. I mean, you can sit there and see, 5 stars on this side and 5 stars on that side and all of this, that, and the other. But, they're not exactly the same player. I mean, there's a lot of times where things are situational. They're, as we've said, JTT could definitely be somebody who plays a little bit bigger, bigger frame or whatnot. Jack is much more of that rush in type of guy. Somebody that I could see being that Bosa-like tactician. And that's not to say that JTT can't do what Jack does and vice versa. But, there certainly is an advantage with having, not only summer, a good part of summer, but spring and into the winter, being that January enrollee. You have all of those months going on, but it's not as easy to sit there and say, well, all of your January enrollees are immediately going to step in and be able to do this, that, and the other, just due to the sheer fact that they've been there. Because we see early enrollees all the time that don't necessarily get out there until year 2 or year 3. We will see some summer guys each year that do step into quicker roles just because of whatever reason. Ja'Kalen Johnson is somebody that I really think, or J.K. Johnson. We'll see what he really goes by once we get to see him in earnest here at Ohio State. And a cornerback, I have a bet with somebody where I threw out a number of snaps that I expect Ja'Kalen Johnson to play on defense. I don't remember what it is. I don't remember who I bet with, to be honest. I honestly need to keep a Word doc with that. It's not like I make huge bets. I think it's a beer or something, maybe $10. I don't know. But, I think somebody like Ja'Kalen Johnson could step in, especially if Ohio State doesn't find the right combination in terms of the back end immediately. And that's not to say, well, you guys have 2 weeks. You guys have through Oregon. You better figure it out or get out. You lose your place in line. But I think somebody like Ja'Kalen Johnson is just that talented. And, he's a 6.0 high 4-star that could come in and have that big role pretty quickly with Ohio State. But then again, I think we kind of felt, we felt that way with Lathan Ransom. And, he's come along, and I think this could be a big year for Lathan Ransom. But you just don't know. I mean, remember when Denzel Ward came in, 3-star, people weren't talking about him. I think it was against Michigan State that he was out there because I don't remember even who it was. Eli Apple or somebody was injured. It was a game in East Lansing, and Ward kind of got exposed, and they had to make the switch in that game. Well, Denzel Ward's now, was a first-round pick with the Cleveland Browns and making bank and looking good, and so again, it does. Everybody runs kind of on their own time cycle. But again, I don't know necessarily who the next guy is going to be. If you held my feet to the fire, I'm going to say Cam Dewberry, even though he says he wants to take some more visits and so on and so forth. Ohio State was that childhood favorite, which is all well and good to a certain extent. But, it does become a business decision. That's an old standby question that we use all the time. At what point did you realize this was a business decision and not just, who you grew up watching? Because honestly, if it was just a who you grew up watching, in a lot of instances, kids would not leave their region. They would certainly not, at least not the region. They might not leave their state even. I grew up in Southern California. I grew up watching USC. Granted, I was not nearly talented enough to consider playing athletics on a collegiate level. I did get a little love for tennis on D3, but that's another time, another place, and about 70 pounds ago. But, if it was a case of where, what's your childhood favorite school? I mean, as a kid, it was SC. Fight Song was cool. Certainly noticed the Song Girls at a coming of age point of my life. It was close enough. I was naive enough not to think of, SC isn't necessarily in the greatest neighborhood, but it's all there. So there is a point of where you have to look at what makes the most sense for you, especially as a collegiate athlete, especially in terms of development to make a career out of this. And I'm not using this as an opportunity to rail on a school and say, oh, well, there's coaching stability or whatever. Ohio State, for a lot of kids, has everything but location. And there are going to be some kids where location just ultimately is something that they can't get past. And we hear all the stuff out there. Oh, well, it's Ohio winters. You're going to be playing in 6 feet of snow. And I think anybody who went to Ohio State, lives in Ohio, yes, tigerbait.com. I need to clean my room. Thanks, Mike. I do need to clean my room, but I got a lot of other stuff going on. Just got off of vacation. I will clean my room here at some point. Then this is my office. This is my office. This is my my work area. But Ohio State has location issues with some kids. It is what it is. But as I was saying, people close to Ohio know that it's not going to be a thank you, Chuck Simon, for the Super Chat contribution. Do you see Georgia being a better team than OSU this year? I will get back to that one just in a second. Let me finish my diatribe here really quick, and then I will get to your Super Chat contribution. Once again, thank you so much. So the point being is we know it doesn't really snow until January, February. It can be downright miserable. It's right around the time that the early enrollees get to town and they see just how crummy it is during that time of the year. And was it Johnny Dixon? I think it was Johnny Dixon. We had the chance to talk to the early enrollees one season. We have on multiple seasons, but one season. And his nose is running, and we're sitting in the Biggs Auditorium over at the Woody, and he's still in a jacket. He's like, man, I didn't know it could get this cold or whatever. It's like, yeah, but do you regret your decision? No, man. I'm good. We're straight. But, it's certainly one of those issues. But what I'm saying is there are going to be kids out of certain areas, and it's not like, oh, every kid from Florida is going to feel this way uniformly, because they're not. But it's going to be, they're going to be kids coming out of certain areas individually are going to be like, I can't go for that. I can't go for that weather. And, if they're as good as they think they are, they're not really going to have a choice. You get drafted by Buffalo, you're going to be playing some games in the cold. And let me tell you, Buckeye Lake isn't going to create any lake effect snow. Buffalo is going to get plenty of lake effect snow. Chicago, which we may be having to call them Arlington here soon. But, if you're playing at Soldier Field, let me tell you, it gets cold there. The wind that comes off of that lake is bone chilling. So, but, I don't think that there's really any programs out there that can sit there and say our facilities are 50% better than Ohio State's or whatnot. Or, I think that you see your top cut of schools that are all going to be pretty similar. Does Ohio State have a slide? No. Does Ohio State have some things that maybe Clemson doesn't have or UGA doesn't have? I don't know. But let me get back to Chuck Simon, who was gracious in the Super Chat, and to his question about Georgia being a better team than OSU this year. I don't know. I think we see two teams that are going to be pretty comparable in terms of national, just what people are going to think nationally about them. Ohio State's certainly going to be breaking in a new quarterback, certainly going to be breaking in new linebackers, a lot of stuff in the secondary. What is the back seven going to look like? Are they going to remain a team that is just largely single high? Are we going to see a little bit more two safety like they had to employ against Alabama? Not that it really mattered, as Alabama was just the better team that night. We don't know a lot of the questions there. As for, hey, Pat Snell, hey, how are you doing as I see you in there? But when it comes to Georgia, they certainly are in a conference with Alabama, which is a problem. Ohio State is the big fish in the pond of the Big Ten. UGA certainly is going to be in that 2 to 5 range, I think, in a lot of the polls or whatever. What's your thought on Kirby Smart? Do you think Kirby Smart is equal to Ryan Day in terms of game day coaching? Do you think he's better than Ryan Day? Do you think he's worse than Ryan Day? we saw Pro Football Focus, PFF, put out, and this was just the opinion of one writer. This wasn't PFF as an organization coming together and saying, we're putting our signature on this. This was one writer who I'm not really familiar with, and that's not, that's just my opinion, and that's not derogatory. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. I mean, so I just don't know who the writer is. Didn't have Ryan Day on his list. Came out and said, well, he's only coached for 2 years, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Roll my eyes a little bit there. I thought it was a bit of a cop-out, but it is what it is. But, what about Kirby Smart? We certainly see what happened with the Justin Fields situation in terms of which quarterback they picked there. That didn't necessarily seem to go well, but, is Ryan Day 100% infallible? I mean, has he made a decision along the way that maybe didn't necessarily work out for the best? I mean, you just don't know. I mean, no coach is 100%. They're not. Nick Saban is not 100% in terms of how things go. At the end of the year, he's lifted more of those, Christmas Story leg trophies than anybody. Ohio State has one from 14. Nick Saban's had a couple of them to go with several Crystal footballs. So, Nick is still the gold standard. But, what do you think is the situation with where does Kirby rank? And let me see. Johnny Lunsford, Jim Harbaugh is heavy. Jim Harbaugh heavy is Kirby. Jim Harbaugh has better hair than Kirby. Kirby needs to get rid of that Mississippi frat boy haircut. Grow up. You grow a mullet. Go Gundy. Go Gundy. That haircut, I just can't take that seriously. Chuck Simon, Kirby Smart is not as good of an offensive coach as Day. I don't disagree with you, Chuck. I don't disagree with you there. But, what about, let's talk about on the defensive side of the ball. And neither of them are necessarily the defensive tacticians. Obviously Ohio State has Larry Johnson on defense. I think that there's still some debate amongst fans about where the scheme is post Jeff Hafley, bring in Kerry Combs back to Ohio State from his stint with the Tennessee Titans. You lose Greg Madison. Where is the defensive, where is that at for Ohio State? You look at UGA. UGA seems to play some pretty good defense, but they've not been able to get over the hurdle completely. Harbaugh is Kirby Smart like Kirby not in Ryan Day's league. Well, I think that we're also in a very like-minded room in terms of outside of my buddy Mike, who is an LSU guy. If he's still hanging out on the channel right now, I think everybody else is pretty much a Buckeye, and they're going to have their pro-Ohio State opinions, which is great. I make a living. I have this messy room because of Ohio State fans, so I'm never going to say anything against that. I mean, I'm going to give you my honest opinion on things, but I agree. I think that that Ryan Day is the better coach even at this point, whether or not a PFF writer wants to put him in after 2 years, 3 years, 12 years, whatever the criteria is. I just say that when you write a piece like that, put the criteria in your setups. Don't leave the criteria off there. I mean, if it was out there to get some clicks and draw some notice, mission accomplished. You did it. You did it. You got it. You got what you wanted there. So that's all well and good. But if you're out there writing the piece in terms of wanting to be honest with everybody, wanting to be intellectually honest, put it in your setups. Coaches that have coached 5 years, head coaches who've coached 5 years at one or multiple stops, 3 years, whatever. Because the thing is, and I said this with some other people, I think on our message board on the Horseshoe Lounge, I said, the problem with this is 2 years is going to turn into 3 years. If people are just hesitant to put Ryan Day on there, they'll just keep moving the goalposts. Keep moving the goalposts and be like, well, that's all well and good, but he doesn't have 3 years or 4 years, or he hasn't gotten it to the point now to where he's operating solely with his recruits. He's still on Urban Meyer's coattails or whatever. And I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. That's not fair. I certainly don't want anybody putting words in my mouth. And I'll get to your questions here in a second in comments. But I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, and that's what's happening here. But I have seen that, and I certainly have seen that. I've been in this industry a long time and seen a lot of that stuff happen. So who knows? But I want to thank everybody for being part of this, and we're going to still keep rolling on. Again, this is part of BuckeyeGrove.com. I want to thank everybody for their comments and for being on board. 13 likes already. That all helps the algorithm. So be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, be sure to hit that bell. Be aware when we drop new content. Not a member of Buckeye Grove, get on board with that. You can follow me on social at Kevin_Noon on Twitter. But let's get back to your comments, and let me find to where we were. Chris Kirby is a good recruiter, but not as good X's and O's coach at all. Seem to hear that some. I need to talk to some of my SEC friends, but again, maybe not my SEC friends, because there's, if I sat there and opened up the question to say, talk about Kirk Ferentz in here, I don't know what the responses would be, but I don't think anybody like Coach of the Year, 7-time Big Ten Coach of the Year, outside of just the joke that I think he's won Big Ten Coach of the Year 7 times, over several of them over an Ohio State coach that's gone undefeated, but that's all based on expectations, and Ohio State's expected to go undefeated. And when an Iowa team that is being predicted to go 8-4 goes 10-2 for whatever reason seems to really resonate with the voters. So, maybe we do one of these again next week, and I go in with what my opinions are based on what I talk to people on. So Johnny says, you show me one AD that will hire smart over day, and I'll show you a dead man walking. Kansas hired Les Miles. I mean, we've seen some, and that has nothing to do with the things that cost Les his job in terms of what happened at LSU and everything else. But speaking of not being infallible, ADs certainly are not infallible in terms of some of the decisions that they make there. We see curious coaching hires. We see coaches get run out too quickly. We see coaches hang around too long. It's. I agree, though. Ryan Day is the direction that I would go in if I were starting a program, and Ryan Day were receptive to other offers. I really don't think he's receptive to offers right now. Certainly think he wants to hoist a national championship trophy, at least one. If anything's ever going to lure him away, it would be the NFL, and I don't think that the NFL song is where he wants to be. RJ is, I think, in junior high school at this point. And that's not to say, well, Ohio State's got him for 6 years because they want to get RJ through school. I know Ryan's got some daughters as well. Coaches, there is a portability when it comes to coaches in terms of moving, so that's not necessarily where it's at. But I think Ryan is somebody that translates well to college, but then again, I felt Urban Meyer was somebody that translates well to college. And lo and behold, he's making $1 gajillion now in Jacksonville. And we haven't seen what that product's going to look like. And it'll be interesting because the Jags were pretty terrible. So, and we know what it's like when you have to sit there and work on a roster. And this isn't a case of where you can process people to run them out. You've got contracts. So, there are trade people and you release people and so on and so forth, but you certainly are some parameters that are very different than college. So, what's going to be a good year on Urban Meyer? I'll throw that question out there as I start going through these, and then we'll try and double back to that. What do you think Urban Meyer year 1 in Jacksonville is going to look like in terms of a record on a 16-game regular season? But we'll look at that one in a second. Pat says, Ryan Day is a young mastermind. I expect to see him coaching on Sundays eventually, touching upon what we talked about right there. I think that if there is going to move at some point, it's going to be NFL. I don't see it being something immediate. There certainly are some differences. People jump in and say, well, if you can go to the NFL, you don't have to F around with recruiting and everything else. Well, if you're in the NFL, you're also coaching a bunch of millionaires. And whatever your feelings are about NIL, you're not going to be coaching a bunch of millionaires. You're coaching kids that are 18 to 21, 17 to 22, whatever. You're not dealing with a 28-year-old who has out-earned you, who's on his second contract or whatnot, who's going to be like, sure thing, buddy, whatever you say. And that's not to say that every NFL player is some sort of jerk. And and maybe that's a very closed-minded view by me. And I don't. Again, I'm saying things just to kind of maybe get some reactions and create some conversation. So take it with a grain of salt. But I just think that there are going to be some coaches out there that just are more about the development and things of that nature. And I see Ryan Day being that guy. But again, we could rewind 5 years ago, and I probably was saying the exact same thing about Urban Meyer. So who the hell knows? Chris says, I think Day will use how Urban does the NFL as a barometer to see how he would do in the pros. Agreed. Pat again, Day sure does have one heck of a decision at QB. Who do you guys think wins the job? I'm going with McCord, even though I think most will say Stroud. You know what? I still say Stroud at this point, and that's based on a pretty small sample size. We got to see the spring game, which, y'all did. Whether or not you were at Ohio Stadium, saw it on BT and saw it on the interwebs. We all saw that. We got to see a touch of practice. They put the quarterbacks far away from us. Whenever they were about ready to do something cool, we were shown the door. So, you know what? Jack Miller could have gone out and been the king of spring, and we wouldn't know it because we didn't get to see it. So a lot of this is really predicated by who we talk to and what they say. And pretty much the conversations that I've had lead me to believe I think it's still Stroud at this point. I think Stroud gives you a little bit of everything, a bit of everything. A little bit of everything kind of sounds like a jack of all trades, master of none. I think Stroud is somebody who provides the most well-rounded. He does a lot of things well, and that's not to say the other two don't. Jack dealt with some injuries toward the end of his career. I mean, how we're seeing Julian Fleming, who's still never been right physically, seems to be doing well now at this point. Will this be his year to break out as the number one receiver in his class? We just don't know. Where is Jack Miller in terms of where is he on the scale of 0 to 100 in terms of being healthy? With Kyle McCord, you're dealing with a guy who has had a year less in terms of in the system. He's attempted just as many collegiate passes as the other two, just based on the nature of the short season, the lack of practice, and everything else. If we didn't have COVID, and this is, again, hashtag stick to sports, not talking about anything beyond just the fact that it occurred. If they would have had normal practices, more than 3 spring practices, an actual summer where they were working out with Mick, not going home and building squat racks out of wood and putting rocks in backpacks and doing squats with that, and then just had a normal build-up, game weeks and everything else, so we certainly would have seen the 2 younger guys have the opportunity probably to at least attempt a pass, just so you're not in this situation where you have 3 quarterbacks on the roster with 0 pass attempts. But, back to you, Chris. I think it's going to be Stroud, but, I think we'll all kind of see going into game week for Minnesota if they even announce one at that point, or what numbers jotting out there with the first team offense up at TCF Bank Stadium in Minneapolis. Chris also jumped in. Ferentz, good developer of talent. He certainly does more with less. I go back some years, and I'm not talking about going back to Hayden Fry at this point. I'm just talking about in the Ferentz era. Remember the linebackers, Chad Greenway and Abdul Hodge? They were, right there in line with linebackers at Ohio State. Certainly didn't have maybe the press clippings in terms of being a high school All-American, but I don't remember even being like super low rated or whatever. But Iowa certainly seems to it has to develop threes and 3-star guys, because sure, you got a Xavier Nwankpa coming out of the state of Iowa. Whether or not he stays home remains to be seen. I'm skeptical. I think he ends up at Ohio State. You are seeing some guys coming out of there, Caden Proctor. So talent is there, but if they're not able to keep the top kids there, they can either sit there and try and go and compete in other areas to compete for those, maybe high threes, low fours, or maybe just really clean up in their footprint, do a great job of evaluating guys that maybe the Ohio States, and if we go back 20 years ago, back when they were more relevant, that team up north and some of the other schools may not put the time in on, and that's not an indictment of saying that the other schools aren't putting the time in because they're being sloppy. But Ohio State may not have to do that because Ohio State and Alabama and Clemson, schools like that, are just recruiting so well that they're all in on the top kids. So that development has always been a big thing there. Pat agrees with Chris about the development. Chuck jumps in, 17-game NFL schedule. And I guess I forgot that it is 17. I'm a Cowboys fan, full disclosure, and this goes back all of my life. I'm 49. I've been a Cowboys fan for 40-plus years. It used to be, stop being a front runner, being a Cowboys fan. Now people look at me and are like, oh, bless your heart. Oh, that's cute. You're a Cowboys fan, especially with the rise of the Browns here. And, so I have a lot of friends that are like, come on board. There's a lot of room still on this bandwagon for you. No, I'm good. Got a lot of friends that are Bengals fans. Nobody's going to accuse you of being a front runner getting on board here. Joe Burrow. You like the family, do that. No, I'm good. I just probably watch less NFL than I ever have right now, just because until Jerry gives up the reins of at least being the guy in every aspect, I just don't know if I can get that excited about that team. Johnny jumps in, 9-8 is a win for Urban and Jacksonville. Absolutely. If they're over 500, that is absolutely a win. You know what? And forgetting that it's 17 games, and I haven't made it through the rest of the comments, so sorry if I loop into your own comment. We'll get through all of them. 6-11, I think, is a win right now. And we just remember how hard Urban took every loss at Ohio State. And it's a different game. You lose a game in the NFL, you're not – the 72 Dolphins are the 72 Dolphins for a reason. One game doesn't mean anything. You lose a game in college, especially pre-playoff or here in this 14 playoff era before we get to 12, 16, 18, 409, whatever the hell it ends up being. You lose a game and it's devastating. It's devastating. A non-conference game certainly knocks you down in position. You lose a conference game, and then, you have that much more catching up to do, especially here in the 4-team era to where there's just no margin for error. 5K Sports, Stroud's going to be out there week 1. I agree. Pat Snell, if he wins 6 games, that'd be considered excellent. We're on board. We're, simpatico. I agree. Chris, Stroud looked the most comfortable out there. I think McCord's the best passer. McCord has beautiful motion, beautiful deep ball. Didn't get the chance to really see him do stuff with the entire route tree or whatnot. So, it's all well and good. You can throw a great spiral, but, if it goes, 5 feet beyond your receiver or whatever, you can't throw that, that 8-yard slant or whatever. And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying, again, we know what we don't know, and we don't know a lot. I'll jump in here again really quick. Be sure to contribute with Super Chat if you want to sit there and help the channel. We sure would appreciate it. I know that we've already gotten the one contribution from Chuck. Keep me off of OnlyFans. I don't want to get out there in a bikini or anything like that. It'd just be a bad look for all. Getting back into this. ALA 24. I don't want to assume what anybody's name means. Stroud for sure. Okay, I agree. 5K Sports. Stroud seems like the short field killer and red zone sniper. A lot. True. I think that's all true points. And again, we don't know necessarily what we don't know about Jack or what we don't know about Kyle. I think it's going to be important to keep. Let me put a marker to where I am right now in terms of messaging, so I don't miss your messages. We don't know what we don't know, so we don't know what Jack would look like there, what Kyle would look like there. We're basing it on a very small skill set. Back to the point I was going to make, I think you have to keep them all engaged. the likelihood of keeping all three quarterbacks going into 22 with Quinn Ewers coming on board, probably pretty slim. But, you need to sit there and make sure that, one, that you have reps behind whoever your starter is. Your starter goes down, and somebody's going to have to step in. And if all they've ever done is just put the ball between the 2 and 8 of Mayan Williams, it's going to be, it's going to be a bad time. I mean, as they sit there and go through their growing pains. And when has Ohio State ever needed a backup quarterback to win a championship? I just can't think of a 2014. That's right. And third stringer with Cardale. So you need to keep these guys involved. And, but I think on the flip side is you can't be so concerned and be playing for the future that you sacrifice your present. You can't be playing for 22 and 23 and just submarine 21. So you can't be going out there and being like, okay, well, you're going to play you these 2 series and you these 2 series and you this 1 series, regardless of what's going on. But you also can't just sit there and say, all right, CJ, you're our main guy. You guys will get our garbage time, and it's going to be like that here on out. Because are you really getting whoever 2 and 3 ready by just putting them out there in what is considered garbage time? Are you really getting them ready for anything if you're putting them out there and they're not getting to target Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, and they don't have Thayer Mumford and MPF out there in front of them on the line? So all various things that you have to think about, and why, guys like Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson and Corey Dennis, and just go through the entire staff, all do quite well in terms of their place in the coaching hierarchy. They're going to have to make some tough decisions and figure all that out. Chris roots for the Cowboys and the Bengals. I know Sam Hubbard relatively well. I wouldn't say like he's leaving tickets for me or anything, but Sam was always really good to me. I think Sam would get a kick if I became a Bengals fan. But again, I think all my Browns fans would really get pissed off with me. I think that as long as I don't have a team in, the AFC North, we're cool. So I'm going to kind of live there. I thought for a minute that if I was going to pick up a second team, it might be New Orleans, just because of the quote-unquote New Orleans Buckeyes. It hasn't happened. My wife's from Louisiana. She's got a lot of Saints fans in her family. So I guess that's probably my second team that I sort of watch. It used to be the Bears. It might be the Bears again with Justin Fields. The thing that kills me is that I watch more Washington football than I care to. That's because I just love watching Terry McLaurin play out there, and then obviously Chase Young. And now you have Curtis Samuel there. I mean, I'm sitting there having to watch a team that I grew up despising. But it's very very different when you're 16 years old and you just don't know. I mean, you don't know any of this situation, so it's not like you. And I want to clear up a misconception out there. It's not like any of us are like that. I'm friends with them, that we're going out to dinner or anything like that. I mean, I guess once you go to the NFL, it's a little bit different because it's very difficult to be friends with somebody that you're covering and cover them fairly. If you sit there and you have a bad game, there's a difference between coming out and saying, John Doe sucked. That's not very helpful. That's not very additive. That's message board talk, and Lord knows I see that. But John Doe had a pretty horrific game. He had 3 drops and really just did not seem to be on the same page with anybody else on the offense. You're kind of saying the same thing without saying it the same way. But enough about that. Pat Snell, I'm a huge Bears fan. Can't wait to see Fields play. I agree. We have a member over at Buckeye Grove that is really good friends with the head coach there. So I'm going to be picking his brain during the season to kind of see what he thinks about some things. David Anthony. So the host of the Michael podcast thinks that NIL will wipe out the possibility that Ohio State will not be able to fill up QB talent with the recruiting trail in the future due to the assume that players will value money over winning and development, and assume coaches like Ryan Day and Nick Saban will not screen for that when recruiting. Do I agree with disagree? Ohio State has done a really good job. We hear culture. And, I think that's something that goes well beyond sports now. I think that you sit there and you see in corporate America, culture, 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 culture. That's a big thing. I think when locker room culture is a little bit different in some regards. And Ohio State doesn't just go out there and just say, well, these are the top 25 kids that we see out there nationally, regardless of where they are. There certainly are going to be kids that Ohio State doesn't necessarily think is going to be a good locker room fit or be good for the culture. And I'm not going to do any examples of who, because I don't talk ill of the kids, even if somebody 15 years ago. It's just not the way I like to operate or do business. But there's just going to be some guys out there that just don't fit for one reason or another, and Ohio State won't recruit them. Plain and simple. Is it going to be as easy to vet what NIL means to these guys? I don't know. We're 8 days into this, and I think it's difficult to know what's going to be the what's going to be going on in the future. Are we going to see the same thing in 23 that we see here in 21? Are we going to see, tweaks and twists? I mean, are we going to get national legislation, whether it's through the NC2A, congressional, whatever's going to be the case? I don't think we know what that's going to look like. I think the biggest thing is, and I may have even said it earlier this show, I don't even remember. We've been on about 56 minutes. Thanks to all of you who've stuck through it, those who've jumped in, jumped off, whatnot. Means a lot that you joined me here for this show. A good chance for me to just really spit out a lot of thoughts too, and have the direct communication with y'all. So, if you like this, be sure to let me know. We'll try and do these a little bit more often. Certainly need to drive you over to BuckeyeGrove.com too, because that's how I pay the bills. So, gotta find that happy medium. But do you really put that much onus on? You put that much of the focus on what you're going to get on NIL, or do you go and get yourself developed and make that money in the NFL? Now, I understand if you're coming out of nothing, that the idea of making, I don't know if anybody's going to be making 100 G's right off the bat in NIL. That sure seems to be desirable. But if you sit there and you make 100 G's doing that, and then you stink, and you're not any good, you're not going to be making that. You're not going to be making generational wealth in the NFL. And if you're not making, and my wife's closing the door because I'm talking really loud, you're not going to be making generational wealth in the NFL. And is that $100,000, which is basically a down payment on that? And you could, let's even say it's $100 a year, so $400,000. And I'm not turning down $400 large, not in a minute. But I'm also not an athlete that has NFL aspirations and a golden arm that has been kissed by God himself and everything else. So I don't know. And while we can debate whether or not scholarships should be renewable from year to year, or if they should be 4-year investments or whatnot, NIL certainly doesn't have to live by any of that. And you could sit there and sign some great deal and flame out and get nothing. And they're going to get nothing in NIL. You're going to get nothing from the NFL. And I guarantee you, if you're coming out of a point of where you just get you think that the ATM is open because you're getting this NIL money, and that has nothing to do with, that could be with the kid that's the worst kid in the world with money, or the kid that's the best kid in the world with money. You just never really see it when you're in the midst of it. And you just think that it's going to go on forever. The music's never going to stop. The pretty girl's never going to go away. The Grey Goose is never going to stop pouring until it does. And then what do you have? So David Anthony, I don't know yet. So it's a long-winded answer to say I don't know, but I hope that I at least kind of touched upon some of it to give you where I'm at. And I'm still several pages, of comments away. Theo Williams, Kevin, can you tell us your top 5 Big Ten head coaches? Yours are Fitz, Day, Franklin, Allen, and Chris. Where's Harbaugh? I certainly I'm the forest can't see the forest for the trees, but Ryan Day's got to be on that list. I don't know. Fitzgerald is there for certain to do what he does at Northwestern. Just has to be there. Maybe Chris. He's kind of on. He's on the maybe as we're trying to build the list of 5 together. They certainly do some things well. They certainly are always involved until they're not. They've made some positional decisions that I question, but I can't say that any coach is immune to that. I don't know if I'm there with you on Franklin. I think that Franklin needs to – we've heard his diatribe. This team is good, but it's not elite. Ohio State is elite. Well, I don't think an Ohio State fan is going to disagree with any of that. When is Penn State going to get elite? I mean, Ohio State can only beat them once. And we joke about, Ohio State beat you so bad or Alabama beat you so bad that not only do you lose that game, but your head is still so wrapped up in it that you lose the next game too. So you lose 2 games because of one loss. But until I see them really take that next step, I mean, they can go 11-1 and lose to Ohio State and probably be considered elite, but they haven't gotten there. Tom Allen at Indiana, I think that's a pretty good, one right there. But let me see what they look like. Walt Phillier's gone. They still have Ty Freifogel. They still have Michael Penix, who got injured toward the end of the season. Let's see what the recruiting looks like. Obviously, they've had a couple of wins. Flipping Dasan McCullough from Ohio State certainly is one. But, and I'm not saying that they went after and hired Dad because of that. I mean, Dad was a very established position coach to begin with. Just happened to be an added benefit there. But, it's all well legal. I mean, it's smart. What about PJ Fleck? He's a guy that talks some big expectations. They do some things right, and then they certainly don't do some things right. I mean, I think they could be a pretty good team this year. Of course, they draw Ohio State right off the bat. So, if they're sitting 0-1, how do they respond moving on? And keep it locked in at BuckeyeGrove.com because on Sunday, this is a perfect segue. I have my grid, and I'm not posting the grid itself, but I go through the entire schedule for the entire Big Ten, picking winners and losers, come up with final records, and I have that posted. In the morning, I'll do the West. In the afternoon, I'll do the East. Stories are written in the can, as we say professionally. But I'll have those dropping on Sunday. Maybe we do this again next week, and I talk about that piece. Tim says, when does practice start? Well, Big Ten Media Days are July 22nd and 23rd. I think Ohio State starts practice like a week after that or so. There are 2 teams playing a 0-week game that was supposed to be in Ireland, Illinois and Nebraska. They get to start a week earlier than everybody because of having that game on the schedule. And then everybody that starts week 1 will go beyond that. So I think, we could count backwards on the dates, but I think it's around the 30th, the 1st, 2nd. I don't know, somewhere around there. I don't know for sure. David Anthony, I'm sorry, the man of the Michigan podcast who believes the 12-team playoff. Is that Steve? I always want to say Deese, but I think he pronounces it differently. I listen to his podcast occasionally. Enjoyable to listen to him on his football product. I don't know if it would be as enjoyable if the tables were turned in terms of Michigan had all the success. So I guess it's one of those things that as long as Ohio State's got the upper hand there, it's probably more enjoyable for people who are around Ohio State all the time to check that one out. But I'll look. I saw it posted over on BuckeyeGrove.com. Once I get done with this show here, we've been on about 65 minutes. I may go another 10, 15. Once I get caught up, we may call it a show. Put out another call for super chat contributions. It helps us keep these things going on. Buy these expensive toys, microphones. I'm not using mine at the moment, but all sorts of that. Every little bit helps. If you want to contribute with the super chat, we sure would appreciate it. If we start doing this more on the regular, maybe that'll be something that we're able to see a little bit more of. Continuing with David and coaching and winning meaningful games. Players want to win games. We always say time and time again, one win or loss, especially head-to-head, doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of a recruitment. Major Wright is one that there certainly was a story out there that I don't disagree with, that he was between Ohio State and Florida. He was a recruit during the 2006 championship game, which was obviously Ohio State and Florida. And some people said it came down to a coin flip. Some people said that he privately told people that he was going to go to whoever won the game. Whether or not there's any truth to that is immaterial. Players want to win games, though. Players want to play. And not to get into what that Penn State player Ken Talley put out on social, and I don't want to get too deeply into that because I don't have the copy of that in front of me, and I don't want to put words in some kid's mouth or whatever. But there certainly is a belief that Ohio State, you're not getting on the field immediately if you go to Ohio State just based on their depth. But conversely, do you want to go somewhere, maybe get to play for 4 years, win a grand total of 9 games? Are you going to get developed enough there? You're probably going to go through more than one head coach. You're probably going to go through more than 2 position coaches. There's certainly are some diminishing returns there. I mean, I think you can go back to pre-Schiano Rutgers and say, well, there's plenty of opportunity to go, and even pre Chris Ash, plenty of opportunity to go play there. You're not going to win any games. I mean, and Rutgers in New Jersey is in a very fertile recruiting territory. So why not go there if playing is is the main thing? So there needs to be there's a lot of prongs on that fork of what's going to make the decision, whether or not it's being able to play in the games, whether or not it's going to be development, whether or not it's going to be winning games. I mean, just so many things there. I think ultimately you do need to sit there, and if you don't develop, it doesn't mean anything. And I don't think you're going to develop by not playing. So the development and playing seem to run kind of hand in hand when it comes to that. So you kind of need both of those. And it sure would be great to win some games while you're at it. And throw in some pretty girls at the school while you're at it too. And if you can make $1 or $3 in NIL, that ain't bad either. So, I think I've just made a great recruiting pitch, not particularly for any school in particular, but check off all those boxes. And if it's close to home, sign me up. Unless you're Marvin Wilson and you want some honey fried chicken and Florida State. And, we kind of talked about that in the ones that got away thread on the message board. So jumping back into the questions, Tim jumped in and said Cardale. I know that's going back to when I was talking about winning with a backup quarterback. Pat Snell has his receiver, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Junior Z, Olave, and Fleming, slot, JSN, and Egbuka. Sounds pretty good to me. And then certainly with the reports and with Jalen Harris and Elijah Gardner not being on the depth chart, it does tighten up the room a little bit. But, if we just sit there and say that those 6 right there, and you don't even have Jaden Ballard on there as a true freshman, certainly some omissions at that point. But who else can compete with him? Who else can compete with him nationally in terms of the receiver room? It's ridiculous. And then as you start bringing in 22, and then with what 23 can be with guys like Carnell Tate potentially or whatnot, but just the class with Kojo Antwi and with Keon Grays and with Caleb Brown, and I'm forgetting one. I know it's a 4-man class. I mean, that receiver room isn't going anywhere anytime soon. They just need to make sure that talking about, development, keep developing Brian Hartline as in the coaching profession. I think we're going to see him continue to see bumps in titles and responsibilities here. Unfortunately, he's still a young guy. I don't think he's clamoring to be an OC quite yet. Certainly has some opportunity as things go on. I mean, at Ohio State, we know it's still going to be Ryan Day's offense, but we'll see what happens with Kevin Wilson. I mean, he's certainly enjoying his stint as OC and working with the tight ends. Had the opportunity to kind of talk with him a little bit during some of the camps, and I've always gotten along really well with him. But he's such a funny guy. He's really a funny guy. And I'm getting, once again, problem with this show, I get away from the point that we're talking about. Brian Hartline equals good. Terry was a 3-star recruit. Not only was he a 3-star recruit, he had to work and fight and claw to get that offer. Go out there, catch 500 passes a day, so on and so forth. It would have been easy to say, to hell with this. I'm going to go to Indiana. I'm going to go to Purdue. I'm going to go wherever. All of that made him better. Olave, as Tim said, was a 3-star recruit too. Theo, Micah Parsons was a good example of not fitting into the locker room. Hell of a player, though. Theo, hit the like button if you can. Absolutely. Please hit the like button. Subscribe. Hit the bell. Be sure to be alerted as we post content. Here in the summer, not a lot of original content in terms of interviews. I'm looking to start upping the video element. If that's something that you're interested in, let me know. Again, the goal is to get you over to BuckeyeGrove.com. Sign up. Be part of the family over there. Join us on the Horseshoe Lounge. If you love the show, that is the greatest way that you can show me that you enjoy all of it. Love to have you all over there. Rod Farva, we didn't get Parson because we violated the rules. Well, yeah, there was the whole game day set situation, but there was a little bit more there too. Tim, it was taking the picture with Kirk. Tim does not like Kirk Herbstreit. We all have our opinions. I mean, I certainly hear a lot of Ohio State fans that feel that Kirk overcorrects not to show some sort of favoritism to Ohio State and maybe holds Ohio State in some sort of higher standard than everybody else. I don't know. Some people certainly think that it's the ESPN affiliation and their deal with the SEC that has become the giant devil in the room. I don't know. You got Cheryl saying hello. Cheryl is a great viewer in terms of being involved in all of this live broadcasting. She's somebody who's on the Mark Rogers channel where I appear on their Buckeye show. I think I've seen her on the Scarlet and Great live product before. I think I'm there. She's done stuff on my individual channel. So Cheryl, hello. Thank you for being here. Tim thinks that the Indiana coach should be 2. Going back to the question about the top 5 coaches, I still have Fitz too. Because Fitz has a longer track record. And honestly, as both of them have to do more with less, there are more constraints in terms to who can get into Northwestern. And I'm not one to sit there and say that I know that there are ways to get some kids in past certain admission requirements or whatnot. I don't think Northwestern yields a ton. And Indiana is a fantastic education. I've got a lot of friends that went to IU. Not dumping on them at all, but Northwestern is kind of Northwestern, and I think that Fitz has been able to separate himself as number 2 in terms of the Big Ten coaching hierarchy. At my opinion, right now, July 8th, 2022. Let's keep rattling through these. ALA 24, Minnesota has a solid coach. Yeah, we talked a little about PJ Fleck. He's exhausting in press conferences. People are like, well, what happens if he became the Ohio State head coach? Well, I would welcome Coach Fleck with open arms because I got a job to do, but he's kind of exhausting. David Anthony, hoping I could do these more often. Absolutely. And I've done these through an application called StreamYard. And I don't know if I've had as many people live here. So I don't know if it's a case of, because I'm doing this strictly through YouTube Studio, that you're seeing it more than you would through StreamYard of how it's being disseminated to everybody or what the situation is. Obviously, my goal is to reach as many people as possible. My goal is to get y'all to sign up for Buckeye Grove too, but into commercial for the moment there. So I'm going to do this in a way that I reach the most of you, the widest audience. Right now, I'm getting much more feedback and interaction doing it this way. I may do the next one StreamYard just to see what that looks like, but I don't know. We'll make a decision. But David, yes, I would like to do more of these. Cheryl, Kevin, are athletes required to get the vaccine? My understanding is no, that they're highly encouraged. We certainly see in the pro leagues that there are incentives to having your tier 1 and tier 2 athletes and staffers vaccinated in terms of the freedoms that they get, in terms of if they get to eat with people and what facilities they get to use. But I'm not under the impression of any sort of mandatory decree at this point. Last time that it was really brought up, it seemed like a lot of guys were in favor of getting it, but it's been a little bit since we've had any sort of open conversation on the record with athletes to see that. And it's a very personal thing too. I have a hard time saying, hey, did you get stuck? I don't know. I'd want them asking me if I got stuck. I mean, I'll volunteer it. I did because I just kind of wanted to be able to travel and do some things. But, I think that's a decision everybody has to come to on their own. And I have no opinion whether or not you are or you're not. That's for you. Tim, it's really rare for a school to rehire a coach like Rutgers. It is. But Greg Schiano's been the guy that got it done the first time, and in the Big East now. So let's see what it looks like in the Big Ten. But if they could be, if they could go 500, that's pretty good. I mean, get to some bowl games, do some things there. You never know. It's the reason you play the games. Rutgers is recruiting better than Michigan. Kind of. Michigan has that 5-star with Will Johnson, which is a huge get. I think Michigan will pick up some more guys as the class goes on, but it's kind of I don't have their class in front of me. I think everybody else might be 5.9 and down. Michigan doesn't recruit the same kids Ohio State does. Michigan doesn't come in and recruit Ohio all that much. I mean, hardly any. But, we don't see a lot of Ohio State, Michigan head-to-head situations unless it's really, Ohio State came up into Michigan to try and recruit Will Johnson, or whether or not, Ohio State recruiting like Dylan Tatum or somebody like that. I think Ohio State brings the fight to Michigan, but I don't know if Michigan brings the fight to Ohio State in terms of recruiting. I don't see Michigan coming in and really swinging with Ohio State for a lot of these kids. I don't see a lot of kids that it's like, I'm down to a final 3 in Ohio State and Michigan are 2 of the 3. It just doesn't seem to be the case. And, that was very much a turning point. I mean, we can go back to Rich Rod. I mean, is that where it's at? I mean, maybe the end of Lloyd Carr or whatnot. I don't know, but they just really are recruiting different guys, and because of that, we're seeing some mixed results. Cheryl, I heard Gene Smith is saying full stadium and tailgating. That's what I've heard too. I look forward to seeing a lot of y'all in the lots over at Ohio State with red Solo Cup in hand. I don't know if I can. I got to work. Red Solo Cup in hand, maybe some buffalo chicken dip in another one. Let's go. Or as they say on social, hashtag LFG. L is for let's, G is for go. I'll let you assume what F is for, but let's go. LFG. ALA Oregon preview. I may save that for another show as we're at a minute or an hour 20. We're closing in on that. I want to try and get caught up, but I will try to announce when I'll do a show next week. Maybe we'll try and do it at the same time because it seems like this time worked off. Seems like y'all were able to get on. Let me think about that one really quick. David, that will be most important for the Oregon game, full attendance. I mean, yeah. The thing is, Ohio Stadium is never going to be as loud in terms of person, attendance per person and decibels is Autzen. Autzen is just everything is just stays in there. Ohio Stadium is a little more cavernous. I mean, I've heard that place, go nuts. And before people get in, oh, it's the damn Blue Hairs. The Blue Hairs don't make any noise. They sit there. They're there for the social event. Are there some? Yeah, I mean, but you know what? I got to tell people how to spend their money. You've been successful in life and you want to go to the Ohio State game, go to the Ohio State game. I don't like PSLs. I'd like to see Ohio State not spread the student section around as much as it does. I don't know about y'all. I gotta have a sip of water. I'm losing my voice. As a student at Ohio State, my first year I was in 5C. My next year I was in 7C, and then I think I was like in 9A. If you were a student at Ohio State and had student tickets and you want to jump in with where you were seated, let me know. I was just happy to be in the stadium. I was just happy to be in the stadium, and generally I was a little intoxicated, so it was all fine. But I think in terms of just some of the speech out there that Ohio State isn't loud enough or whatever, quit diluting the student section the way that you are. And that's difficult because it is a business and they are selling PSLs and everything else, and however that works. And honestly, I think the PSL is more of what they do at the Shot. And now they have this new ticketing system, and I don't want to completely rail on it because I don't fully understand it. But the point being is that I think you need to have students in better positions. I mean, you certainly have Block O both in the south stands and then in that one section in the north. But I think you need to have them concentrated a little bit more down low just to have that volume. But that's me. First home game, David Anthony. If that question is for me, my freshman year was 89. I started at OSU Marion because I told Ohio State I was coming at about the last second. They're like, well, we're full at Columbus. I was going to go to Pepperdine. Long story. I ended up at Ohio State. So the 1990 season would have been my first year. Now, I don't remember if the USC rain game, the lightning game that they lost to SC, if that was my first game or if that was my second game. But 1990 would have been my first year with a student ticket. So I hope that answers that. Tim Hartline said he'd never leave. Well, I hope so. I mean, for Ohio State's sake, that would be fantastic. But we'll see. David Greenshield. Hey, David, how's it going, man? See you on the Mark Rogers channel. Maya Jack Cone supporter. Yeah, there's a running joke there. I didn't even go into these conversations looking to bag on Jack Cone. That's just not how I roll normally, but I was never really a fan of his play. I'm sure he's a wonderful guy. Probably gives to charity, helps out widows and orphans and puppies and kittens and nuns. But it just became a running joke over there that if I ever was going to rail on a player, it was Jack Cone. So that's where that comes from. But yes, fan club number 1, president, Ohio chapter. Cheryl, thanks, Kevin. Been watching Buckeyes for over 40 years. God bless you. God bless you. How can you do that when you're only 29 years old? How can you be watching them for 40 years when you're only 29? I don't understand that. The math doesn't work out. I didn't have to take math at Ohio State. I tested out of it, thank God. And I was told there'd be no math in this job, and so far, so good. Will, Herbie is a Buckeye through and through. Don't let that act fool you. Again, I think some of it is just the ESPN hatred that Ohio State fans have. I think some of it is maybe that Herbie does overcorrect sometimes because we work so hard to stay down the middle. That's where we're at in this. We're not here to praise Caesar. We're here to, we're here to bury him. We're just here to report the story. I mean, are there times that the lines are crossed? I've seen it. I've seen it, but I think it's an overcorrection. I liken it to the Little League dad, that there's 2 Little League dads out there. There's a Little League dad that's going to be like, I don't give a crap. I'm starting my son at pitcher. That's just what's happening. I'm putting my time in. I'm taking care of my boy. And then there's the other dad who's like, I don't want to look like that dad, so I'm going to ride the ever living blankety blank out of my son this whole time and not give him anything for nothing and make him earn it, to the point of it just looking like that they're just horrible to them. So, and I'm not saying, that's an over exaggeration to this point, but I do agree with Will that, I don't think that Herbie hates Ohio State or anything like that. Probably not happy with, some of the people that get on his social, and that, whether or not his move to Nashville was based on people being total a-holes to him or not. Who am I to judge? I haven't talked to Herbie in a while, and Herbie's not somebody that I have on my speed dial that I could talk to. Just not one of those guys. But, I have talked to him in group settings. David says, hey, Cheryl, again, that goes back to Mark Rogers' channel. Tim, Indiana top 10 preseason. Who knew? Wake me when we get to the August preseasons. That's kind of where I want to see the AP poll. I want to see the coaches poll. I have friends that work for a couple of the different magazines. I really like Phil Steele. It's great to have the magazines out right now and be able to talk about it. Let's get to August. Let's see who wins some of these position battles. Cheryl says hi to David. I delivered pizza to Kirk, and he only gave me a $2 tip. That SOB. That's horrible. I just ordered Domino's yesterday, and it was about as good as expected. But even there, I think I tipped $4 on a relatively small order. Help where you can. No joke, his wife would always give me $5. Well, you needed to make sure that she was the one answering the door. Jacob, name your all-time O-line from current and past players. Oh, lordy. Let's do that next time. I could sit there and say, Orlando Pace, John Hicks. I could go to, I could go to some of the obvious ones. I think that it's probably a better exercise from maybe players I've covered or at least have seen in person. John Hicks was pre me professionally. And I was probably in diapers at the point that he played. But, I certainly would, Orlando Pace is probably one of the most dominating players I've ever seen, position regardless. I'm gonna pick and choose a little bit more. I'm gonna try and get out of this in the next 5 to 7 minutes. Again, I'll make one more push. Be sure to subscribe. Be on board for whenever we do these shows. Hit the bell next to it. Get the alerts. If you like the show, be sure to like. If you like the show, be sure to tell your friends about it. If you like what we're talking about, be sure to sign up for BuckeyeGrove.com. If you have any questions about it, shoot me an email. I'm going to put my email here in the chat, but it's Kevin@BuckeyeGrove.com. It's not that difficult, but there we go. Kevin@BuckeyeGrove.com. If you have any questions about signing up, would love to have you. And then, of course, we have the Super Chat, which we're still figuring out at this point. But that's a great way to be able to kick in a couple bucks toward the site, beer money, gas money, whatever you want to call it. Be sure to do that as well. The opportunity to do things like that, just the sheer number of people that have asked questions have me motivated to do these more often. So, we've accomplished that. So I want to thank you all for that. Let's jump through here as we're moving. Did say I give 5 and I'm retired. Will said about the pizza to Tim. There you go, Will. There you go. I've delivered to the Vrabels, Robert Smith. So you're working the hoity-toity neighborhoods at that point. Who win the West this season? You're going to have to wait till Sunday to see my prediction on that over at Buckeye Grove. It's not a premium story. You'll be able to see it. Mean a lot to me. If you were a premium member, you might be, David. I don't know. But it's coming on Sunday, I promise. I think around 2 o'clock I pick or around 11, I think is my West. So we'll see that there. Shoot, I lost my page. All right. David is right. Michigan did try, and I don't have to do push-ups. I'm not on the team. So before anybody gives me grief about using the M word, I'm not on the team. For Harrison, that was Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. So you're right. Be cool if JTT got a sack versus Oregon. Absolutely. Rod Favre, I was in B my first 2 years as a student. Was that by choice? Did you like the not getting rained on? Because let me tell you, I got drenched during that SC game. or is that just kind of where you were at? I mean, I know that there were some trade outs that if you were none of my friends wanted to be in B. So my assumption was that if you were in B, maybe you were more around the middle as opposed to getting stuck out in 5A, which was end zone. Rod, who here are OSU grads, 04. I am one of those delinquent college dropouts myself. I just need a couple of classes. So maybe the Super Chat can send me back to school for my last couple of classes. I would have graduated in 94 if I would have stayed, but I got a job at Channel 6. And they made the very valid point of, what are you going to school for? I said, a degree. And they said, no, really? I said, well, a job. And they're like, well, we're offering you a job. Good point. And I've worked in the industry since. Tim is a dropout like me. Yes, here we go, dropouts. David is an 06 grad. Rod Farva bartended at Lido's on North High. I never really went to Lido's. I'm just not one. Back in my day, I went to Purity and Papa Joe's, maybe at 21, maybe a little younger. I certainly wasn't grandfathered in. I'll let you do the math there. I think that the statute of limitations is over on that. David saw the Bucks win the Natty his freshman year in 02. I was working for Fox Sports Net in Dallas. To me at the time, I certainly didn't work the night of the game. To me, the thought of just traveling to games seemed really foreign at that point, unless I was in the media covering it. So I watched it from a place called Nedley's in Dallas, which was in Richardson, and it was the alumni bar. And you would be surprised how many people I've talked to through the years who said, really, I was there too. Huge alumni chapter in Dallas, as you can imagine. But that's where I watched that game. Cheryl wishes she was still 29. Well, you're 29 in my heart. 80% mental, 40% physical from Tim. That came up at a point where I don't remember what it's in reference to. David, we missed Spence and Bosa and Jay Bosa in 14 and 15. We missed N Bosa and Chase Young in 18. We did not miss JT&T and Sawyer in these next coming years. Absolutely. I think they just need to make sure they keep getting that push on the interior defensive line. Not that you're really going – I mean, you can't double both of them and be like, well, free run to these guys, but will they have that defensive tackle guy that I love, that I put a future cast in, Hero Canoe, class of 2022, guy that's still learning to play the game, but there's still a lot of guys out there that I think that they could sit there and get. Certainly we talked about Chris McClellan, defensive tackle out of Owasso, Oklahoma. David sadly grew up watching Cooper days from New York City on TV. Well, I watched the Cooper years from Columbus, Ohio, because that's where I was. Rod Farva, that's where I got put. B-deck sucked because you get stuck behind the pillars. Absolutely. So I wasn't sure. I didn't know if maybe you lucked out and got the first two rows where it wasn't a situation. Granted, my pregame ritual was I would go to Jousters, which you have to be about my age to remember Jousters. It was on on Lane Avenue near High, kind of where the B-Dubs is now. And we would drink there. We'd go to the games. The first quarter would be a blur. Second quarter, we would generally be in line for the facilities and then be hung over by halftime. David Anthony, true with Orlando Pace. You guys, Ricky Dudley. He's not a great day game coach. I guess talking about Cooper. Cooper won a lot of games. I like Coop personally. Won a lot of games. Just couldn't beat Michigan. Not very great record in the bowl games. And go back and look at Winsipedia against Indiana or Illinois. Couldn't beat Illinois. Lou frickin' Tepper. Who couldn't beat Lou Tepper? John Cooper couldn't beat Lou Tepper. I mean, so that one was the one that I never could really understand why. And Illinois had some dudes. It wasn't like he was losing to Lovie Smith's Illinois team. So, I get it to a certain extent, but that was a tough one. Cameron Roper, do you think these new 21 edge rushers will be in the rotation this year? I think they'll see some playing time. You're going to take Zach Harrison, Tyler Friday, Tyreek Smith, guys like that off? No, but Larry Johnson also wants to play guys 20, 25, 30 snaps. So I think there's going to be some opportunities there. David Greenshield to David Anthony talking about the 95, 96, 98 teams. Yeah. Yeah, I was working at Channel 6 producing Buckeye Football Fever, now known as The Fever or Football Fever. I don't know what they call it now, but I was working in the industry at that time. I saw those teams up close. Some heartbreaking moments for Buckeye fans. Cameron is a current OSU student. Cameron, glad to have you on board. Theo, great stream, Kevin. Have a good one. You too, Theo. Thanks for being part of it. Be sure to join us next week. We'll do one. David Anthony, yeah, the 98 team was special. Jermaine, Boston, the Rose Bowl win. 96 finally beating Notre Dame and making the series equal. Then, yeah, well, Notre Dame has not been anywhere close to Ohio State here in recently. I was going to say, why am I thinking that those games were like 94, 95? Maybe it was 95, 96. And then, of course, Ohio State. I was there for the win in the Fiesta Bowl or whatever. Tim, last comment. How freaking good is Chase Young? Guy's unbelievable. He's as good as he wants to be. He does a great job out there. Amazing freak athlete. I mean, puts the time in. He could just show up and be like, well, here I am. But he's a worker. David Greenshield, still feel the 98 team would have beaten Tennessee on a neutral field. We'll never know. That's a shame. I would have paid 98. I had no money. Well, 2021 I have no money either. But that's why sign up to Buckeye Grove. But I'd pay some money now to see that players at their peak. Cheryl, I was in Ohio outside of Columbus those years when Cooper was coach. I left Ohio in 12, hoping I'll get back home in the spring. Come on back. Real baller, when will OSU play Miami again? I'm assuming you mean Miami, Florida, not Miami of Ohio. When will Miami return to any sort of what it was during the U days? Because right now it's just another team. They're just another team. So yeah. And then if you mean Miami of Ohio, I don't know what all of the in-state games look like moving forward. We talk about, they got a series against Texas, a series against Notre Dame, blah, 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 blah. It certainly hasn't filled in the schedule at this point, so we don't know what some of those other games are going to look like. Rod, my freshman year was Cooper's last year. Is quite an adjustment as a student going from Cooper to winning it all in my junior year. Yeah. It, one that you were more than willing to make. It wasn't a case of, I'm so used to all these disappointing losses, being led all the way to the altar only for the beautiful bride to run away. It was, I'm sure, a very happy, welcome moment for you at that point. I can assure you, watching the championship game at Nedley's in Richardson, Texas, there were a lot of people that weren't ready to accept it until it was ready. And I'll never forget, we were sitting in the back room at Nedley's. I was actually part of the alumni board. I was secretary on it, just because I wanted to stay involved somehow. And I wasn't covering Ohio State, so I didn't feel there was any conflicts or anything at that point. I was working toward Big 12 stuff at the time. When the pass interference happened, and of course, Fouts didn't see it, and then of course Fouts went all Fouts on it. But I was the only one who saw the flag. Everybody else had just pretty much buried their heads in their hands and went surrender Cobra or whatever. And I saw, I'm like, there's a flag on the field. There's a flag on the field. So there was a lot of celebration at that point, but we even knew there that that didn't necessarily mean anything, because Ohio State still was going to need to be able to get a stop, which it did. But Ohio State, with overtime rules, had to score in the top of the second, which they did, and then to get that stop, obviously that blitz and C. Grant and everything else. I don't remember a lot of things in my advanced age of 49 years old, but I can remember that that game almost play for play, just because growing up, a lot of teams that I cheered for on the professional level had gone out and won championships, but I had not seen anything like that in terms of Ohio State, even if you count 70, which a lot of people do, some people don't. I was born in 71, and even if it would have been 71, I wasn't going to remember it. So I had never seen that championship, and it's just really a different feeling for most people than like a professional team, because I just think that there's certain levels of investment. And that's not to say, look, when the Cleveland Browns break through and win a Super Bowl, for their fan base, it's going to be unlike anything else. I think that Cleveland Brown fans are as close to collegiate fans, and I don't say this to upset like the Bills Mafia or the Black Hole for the Raiders or whatever, but I really do think that Browns fans have a level of investment, a level of ownership. I don't even know if I can find the right words there, that I don't see in a lot of places. The Dallas Cowboys win. Hooray, that's great. I mean, I don't remember one. It's been a minute since they've done it. It's great. You know, I'm a Chicago Blackhawks fan. Hey, you know, they won 3 cups in 6 years or whatever it was. That was great too. But, you know, I think that the collegiate experience, even you don't have to go to a school to be invested to. And that's the thing that pisses me off. People are like, oh, well, why are you a fan of XYZ? You didn't even go to school there. Well, who are you to tell me who I should be a fan of and why I should be a fan or not? You're not the fan police, Karen. So, you know, that pisses me off to no other. So, you know, putting that aside, I think Browns fans are going to absolutely lose it. But for me, seeing that championship in 2002, I was never sure if I was going to see one. I mean, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. You know, that certainly seemed to be something that was ringing true at that point. And being somebody who'd been working in television sports for, you know, I started an internship at CNN in 94 or so. So, I mean, I'd already had 8 years in the industry at that point. You know, it was something. But now, of course, I've let more messages happen. And then I'm going to end, I promise. I really didn't want to go for 2 hours. Bold take. This is from Rod. The best players in the SEC the last 40 years would lose the best players from Miami the last 40 years. I don't know. Let's table that one and get back to that one next week. Let me think on that one a little more. You know, I certainly have a lot of other things I got to think about too. So no promises that I'm going to remember that one. But that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. I don't know. Alabama's had some dudes here recently. I mean, obviously Miami during the U years, pretty damn impressive. But 40 years is a pretty big window. Pretty big window. But then again, it was 20 years ago that I thought 40 seemed like just a gigantic number in a couple of months. It's not that big. Basketball related, LeBron's son to Ohio State. What would that mean to the school? I don't know if I see Bronny ending up at Ohio State. I think it would be great just because you would have even more of LeBron's attention. Not that he doesn't pay attention on the reg, but, you know, I think that with, you know, if his son were at Ohio State, that would be huge. I think that we would see potentially some they already wear the LeBron jersey logo or whatever. I think we could see even more of an integration of some sort. I don't know. Cheryl was born in Columbus, living in Ohio, except for when she was in the Army, and then recently coming out to Arizona. Time to come home to Ohio. I was going to say it's probably hot in both places right now. So, and we have Del Tacos now. 3 of them in Central Ohio. 1 of them in Whitehall, which is the closest one to me. So, you know, something that I could only get out in Arizona, in California and other places, obviously, but now I can get it here in Ohio, so that's pretty exciting. Rod, I'm an OSU grad. I'm totally okay with people who didn't attend OSU, cheer for the Buckeyes. I agree. I kind of said my piece there. I just see a lot of that. I saw somebody on Twitter, and I think that they were just trolling for interaction, and maybe they weren't, and whatever. You know, do what you do. You do you. But they were getting pissy about people that were Ohio State fans that had no ties, really insinuating people who didn't go to Ohio State had no business talking the way that they did. I disagreed with it, but I also don't want to get A lot of my customer base are also Browns fans, so I'm not going to piss off that segment of my customer base on that platform for that very reason. I thought it was misplaced, but it is what it is. But once again, I want to thank you all. I'm going to quit taking questions at this point. I thank everybody who's been involved. I think we got up into the high 30s in terms of people involved, 27 likes, got a fantastic super chat contribution, our very first one. Granted, first time I really asked for them. So thank you, Chuck Simon, if you're still on board for the $5. That means a lot. If you like what we're doing here, be sure to hit that thumbs up, like the show. If you like what we're doing, be sure to subscribe. It means the world. We're closing in on 3,000 subscribers on the channel. I definitely want to get there here in the next week if we can. And that means 7 days. That doesn't mean necessarily, by tomorrow, but that would be great. Be sure to like this video, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, know when we're getting on board. And if you're not a member of Buckeye Grove, come on, take a look. Join the Horseshoe Lounge. Check out all of our content, all of our great community. Get on there. Let me know, hey, I signed up because I saw you on the live chat. That would be fantastic. And, thanks again, all you great Buckeyes fans. Thank you to everybody. Cheryl came in, thanked us once again here in the chat. No, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Rod, for everything. You all take care. You all have a wonderful weekend. Have a great weekend. If any news happens, you can follow us there at Buckeye Grove. You can follow me on Twitter at Kevin_Noon. Have a great weekend, and we'll do this again next week, I promise.